Hello everybody, this is Video Game Growing Pains, and I have a question for you. What if you could play Final Fantasy V, but with the strategy of a game like Shining Force or Fire Emblem? And what if, as well as being able to change into different job classes, you got some unique supervillains who also had the same job classes or better ones? And what if you could be in those job classes? And what if this was all taking place in a Game of Thrones style political intrigue story? Final Fantasy Tactics, ladies and gentlemen, that is it in a nutshell. This game was something truly special and amazing, and remains so today, even more so actually, because we have something to compare it to with Game of Thrones or any of the other political thrillers that are out there. Final Fantasy Tactics follows, ironically, sort of a flashback. Not exactly a flashback, though. We have a historian figure who's looking into a war called the Lion War, where a man named Delita Hiral actually came out as the hero, uniting warring peoples under a single crown and stopping a great civil war. However, it turns out that Delita was actually kind of a douchebag, and that the true hero was a man named Ramza Biol. And his story has been hidden because he was branded as a heretic by the church and it was considered unholy. So now this historian is bringing to light the story, and we are going to go through it and play it. Ramza's story is an interesting one. It follows the son of a noble, the adopted son, it's believed to be at least, who, well, he sort of has a rude awakening when the world changes around him. He's trained to be a knight, but the knights start doing horrible things and butchering people. They start betraying the people close to them, and he actually can't go home anymore, so he flees and becomes a vagabond mercenary. And slowly he sees his past coming back to haunt him. His friend Delita, who he knew as a young boy, and whose sister he watched die, well, he comes back and he starts trying to get embroiled in a plot to use a princess to bring civil war to an end by declaring a rightful king. And slowly Ramza gets embroiled in even more political thrillers. You see, not only is he battling with his friend Delita and the people who want to use the princess, but an unusual treasure has been discovered. A stone which has the power to awaken unholy monsters in the world. Monsters exist in this world, but they're your standard ones. You have dragons, you have Ahrimans, you have behemoths. But imagine if a god came down to Earth and you had to fight him. That's what Ramza sees near the end of his second chapter. And the story keeps going. These godlike beings are being summoned by a cult, and they possess the bodies of those using them. Their goal is to revive a fabled myth of a hero who actually turned out to be something of a destroyer. And they need Ramza's sister to do it, along with several other people in the world. And all the while, Ramza's having to dodge a lot of political problems because even though he's killing monsters, they look like people when they die, so he's been branded an outlaw, a heretic by the church. People want this guy dead, and all he wants to do is help others. It's very interesting because it starts out as just a political thriller, but ends up becoming a quest to save the world. It's a very compelling story. Graphics-wise, the gameplay is very good. It eschews some of the standard 3D tropes and creates a sprite-based system. You have a 3D plane which you can move around in, a la Shining Force or Fire Emblem, where you're allowed to move a specific amount of units, and then your opponent has to move. But the characters are all sprite-based, and this is a great relief because the sprite-based characters are so much better than the other ones. They work so much better. They're so much more attractive than the other ones. Now, this is the standard battle system. You move around a battlefield, and you go ahead and you fight enemies. However, an interesting thing about this is there is also a job system a la Final Fantasy V. A system where you can actually mix and match skills from certain jobs, and you can use this to create your own unique fighter. The number of jobs is quite staggering. You're able to, for example, take the skills of a chemist and say, every time you're hit, you heal yourself with the strongest potion available. Or, every time that you are hit, you counterattack, a la monk. You can make it so you don't need weapons because you're actually just using your fists. There is an incredible amount of things that you can do with this versatile class system. It can feel a little grindy, though. Also, there is one major problem with the game in this regard. That problem being that you recruit a lot of characters to do this. You recruit sort of randomly generated characters. But the problem is, later in the game, you get special class characters. What do I mean by this? I mean that certain characters later in the game, such as Mustadio the Sniper or Agrius the Holy Knight, have classes that are unique to them, and these classes are incredibly powerful, way more powerful than what your standard guys can do. And you're only allowed to bring 5 characters into battle with you, so eventually the characters you created, they're gonna be, well, traded out for these better ones. And we have so many great character classes here that it would be stupid not to. I mean, yeah, it's great to have a knight or a dragoon or a ninja, but how can you argue with saying having a ninja holy knight or having a dragoon dragon tamer? It's impossible to really argue that. So that's both good and bad because it gives a lot of variety to some of the characters. But it also means that you're going to be swapping out the characters you've worked and built up for these special super characters later in the game. Mixed bag. The gameplay can be quite brutal, actually. It's also forgiving in some ways because if you die in battle, you've got 3 turns to revive your fallen soldier, and otherwise they turn into a crystal, and you can either get healed by it or you can learn one of their abilities. Same for the baddies. They die, and you wait long enough, you might be able to learn some free job abilities. You don't get to choose, though, so yeah, not always great. But this means that you have to sometimes think carefully. Is it worth it to try and win the battle quickly, or is it worth it to try and save your friend? And I hope you have a character who can use items, because items are a special skill. And you have to buy the ability to use Phoenix Down. So, better be ready, better be prepared. There's a very large amount of job skills that you can do here. Summoner being probably one of the most popular, but there's also very unique ones, like the Geomancer and the Calculator. The Calculator is fascinating because he does damage based on levels. For example, any character with a level divisible by 3 can get hit by a blast of fire. Any character with an odd or a prime number can get hit with ice. Very interesting character design here. And all the abilities are very interesting. Very unique. The story is probably one of the things that will keep people coming back for more, but it does have its fair share of flaws. Most notably in that you are forced into certain battles, which are multi-battle ones. You can't leave to heal or restock your characters. And if you save during those, you either have to win or restart the game, and that's incredibly frustrating. But the characters are well-rounded. Ramza and his group are surprisingly likable, and the game is very, very large. Even if you don't worry about the story missions, you can send your handcrafted characters on other special missions. These missions will get you information about strange and mystical lands, ancient treasures, or they'll just get you money and experience. And these legends and myths that you find out about really help flesh out the world and make it feel whole. One thing I absolutely love about Final Fantasy Tactics, though, is that there's a lot of side quests that you can get involved in. The big one being the Deep Dungeon, which is 13 levels in complete darkness. The only way to see things is to kill enemies and let their crystals, which happen when they die, light the way. You have to find specific floor tiles to stand on to advance into the next level. It's a devious and very difficult dungeon. But you also get a lot of secret characters, including a robot, a dragon tamer, a dragon, a monkey-like demon thing, and you can recruit Cloud Strife onto your team. I'm not kidding. Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, in an odd bit of canonical sort of plot twisting, comes to the world of Ivalice, which is where Final Fantasy Tactics takes place, and fights with you for a while before, theoretically, he gets sent home. I mean, he does have a short time in Final Fantasy VII where he's out of the action, so this kind of makes sense, maybe. It's weird, but it's very cool. The game is quite difficult because you have to use your brain here. This is not a mash A until they die RPG. You have got to think about what you're doing and who you're going up against. Do you want to steal their sword? Do you want to break their weapon? Are they going to break your weapon? Be careful. Okay? This game is great. The music surprisingly is not from Mr. Nobuo Uematsu. The two behind it are Hitoshi Sakamoto and Masaru Iwata. and they they create a very compelling track, a very interesting set of songs. It's a lot more somber, and it very does a very good job at bringing out emotions, like Mr. Uematsu's. It's not as powerful, but it is still damn impressive. And I have to say, I quite like it. The opening theme was one of my favorites. This game is great. It should be played by anyone, and thankfully, it can be played by anyone. Final Fantasy Tactics saw a re-release in the late 2010s, not the late 2010s, but you know what I mean, on the PSP called Final Fantasy Tactics War of Lions, and it's a great game. You can even do online battles, though that's very, very slow. And we added some new classes, like the Dark Knight. There are a lot of things to do in this game, and it's very, very fun, but it will eat up your time, so be careful about that. Ultimately, Final Fantasy Tactics is a very different kind of game. It showed Square trying a different formula with Final Fantasy, something they would do much later. And I think it would be fine if this was its own little thing. The world of Ivalice is the world of the strategy games. Unfortunately, that would start to blend together later on. But standing on its own, this title is very good. It does a good job of world building, storytelling, and political intrigue. It's very, very devious in what it tries to do. And it's still a fun game besides, going from political thriller to world-saving drama. And I love it. I loved every second of it. So put down your George R. R. Martin Game of Thrones books and pick this game up. I would say it does a much better job than that series. I think this game does a better job than almost any series in depicting both the horrors of war, the callousness of fate, and the brutality and viciousness of those in power, but at the same time being upbeat enough to keep you from leaving the series entirely. This story is grim, but it's still very upbeat, and it feels like you have hope all the way through to the end. And that's precious in a game like this. Next time we go for a bit of a lighter fare. We're talking about the Chocobo games and some tangentially related Final Fantasy titles. Alright, that will be the end of our era. See you next time!